Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies and welcome to the 10th episode of the Big Q&A. As opposed to the previous two, I'm going to make it up and answer just a bunch of lore questions. I'm gonna make this Q&A lore again, so there's gonna be at least I believe there's 8 that I have lined up, because the last few have just mainly been announcements for the channel and things happening, so for you guys that don't really care about it, I'm not gonna bore you too much in this one. However, as always, you can just skip to the sections of the video that you wanna see, as all the times are in the description below. So there's the 2 sections, the channel unrelated stuff and the lore questions. So for the non-lore stuff, I'm going to keep it brief and talk about a few things. If you guys watched the previous Q&A, I announced a Discord channel and have opened it, and so far it has been going pretty well. If you guys have not seen it, there is a link in the description below if you wanna go there. I try to be there as much as possible so you can ask me questions and ask questions the other people that are there that know the lore, because there's a lot of very knowledgeable people there. However, I'm not always there. I try to be there as much as possible. The thing is, I easily get distracted, sidetracked, and then I just don't do work. If you guys cannot notice that on the channel for this half a year, it has been going pretty slow, so I'm trying to really get my focus back on and really just try to work on videos. But I try to answer your questions. If you join there, I'll be there at least once a day or twice a day. So there is also a ranking system. You get levels based on the messages you send. There's also a lore master rank based on you answering questions, like lore questions, to people that ask questions there. So if you guys are looking for a Discord server where you can ask questions mainly focusing on the lore, it's not just lore, there's other unrelated stuff, there's a general channel, but I try to keep some rules in place so that it doesn't go completely toxic. But just feel free to join there, as there is a link in the description. Now, the next thing that I mentioned in the previous video is that I have not really been playing the game as much in the past few months, and since that video, I believe it's been a month since I made the video, I've actually been playing the game quite a bit. I've been doing the daily things, the world quests, the raids. I haven't really raided with a guild, I mainly just do LFR. I just don't have the time to organize. I might do some pugs, but I might do it at some point, but I don't know, at this point I don't really have the time. But I've been playing Legion. I mean, I can't just not play Legion and make Legion videos. I gotta keep up with the lore, and it has been pretty fun. I mean, I feel like it's a bit better than the previous expansions. I know the world quests, I won't say they're a disappointment, but I think they're a bit better than the daily quests. They aren't completely different, they're kinda rehashed daily quests, just packaged a bit better, but they're still kinda interesting. I mean, I do have fun with them, a bit more fun than with the daily quests, and it's definitely not as bad as it was in Worlds of Draenor. I remember when I started playing Worlds of Draenor, I was super excited about this garrison. Oh, we're gonna build this thing, and then we're gonna fight against the Iron Horde and the Legion, and then 2 weeks later I just got completely bored, and it was let's just check this mine and this herb garden. So Legion has been a lot more fun. I've been playing it pretty actively for at least a month. I played it, I mean, I did play it when it was released for at least until December, January. So I'm getting back into the game, and this is definitely a good thing for the channel, as when it comes to making videos, it just makes me more inspired when I actually play the game and I enjoy the game. It doesn't help that much on work ethic, which is something I'm struggling with, but it definitely gets me inspired, and I get a lot of ideas of what I want to make, which videos I want to do, and all of that, so it is definitely helping out. Also, currently I'm working on the Chronicle book videos. I won't do it, as I said before, I won't do it like I did it in the past, 3 videos. That was so time consuming. I still remember making those videos, because I think this book has 200 pages or something, so when you read it, when you're making a video, it's more like studying for school than just reading a book. So I read it once, and then I read it really in detail, and I had to reference the pages back and forth, and it was so much time, so much time consuming. It was a 45-minute video with quite a lot of editing, so it's not something I'm gonna do. What I will do, however, is sort of these videos on interesting topics. So I did how was Draenor created. The next video that I'm already working on is the origin of the orcs, so I'm gonna talk about the Gron, Ogron, and orcs, and then I might do some other videos, maybe the Arakoa and all of that. I might do other videos in between, because I know a lot of people don't really care about the Arakoa and the ogres right now, but I will try to make these more interesting videos and cover the Chronicle, kinda so you get an idea of what is interesting in the book. So I believe that is about all there really is. I don't really want to talk too much about the channel, and there really isn't that much to talk about at this point, so let's just get into the lore section. So the first question is by Eric's Man, and he asks, is Archimonde actually dead? I've heard conflicting answers based on the mythic fight in Hellfire Citadel and also at BlizzCon last year. Well, I've definitely received this question quite a lot since I believe I mentioned Archimonde in one of the videos. I think it was the strongest, not mortals, I think strongest characters, and then a lot of people talked about how he was dead. And we know that Blizzard said in Worlds of Draenor that we fought Archimonde directly in the Twisting Nether, and when we killed him, he was actually defeated there. However, later on, Dave Kozak said in an interview with Jesse Cox that Archimonde thing might not be canon, they still might do something with him, as in they're not really sure if they want to get rid of such an important character like that simply. So far, at least I haven't seen him in Legion. Kil'Jaeden has kinda been in the spotlight. He's kinda like taken over the Burning Legion. Like you can see Sergeras talking to him, but Kil'Jaeden is kinda like the one that's actually being the general. Now, I personally think that it is really stupid that we defeated Archimonde in the Twisting Nether. Like, that was so lame, because when you remember back in Warcraft 3, it took so much like sacrifice to be able to defeat Archimonde. Like, the entire World 3 pretty much just like completely exploded, and all the spirits and all the people that died just so they can trap Archimonde, and then he gets destroyed there, and then we go to Worlds of Draenor, we have like 25 people with a few NPCs and we defeat Archimonde, so it is kinda lame. I don't think it is a great idea, and I don't think that we should get rid of Archimonde like that, at least. I mean, I don't really wanna have Blizzard recycle the same characters over and over again since Warcraft 3 Worlds of Draenor, but I wouldn't really want to see a character like Archimonde get defeated by like a raid group, because it makes sense for Lich King and I guess Deathwing, but Deathwing wasn't defeated. Like, the Deathwing story makes sense. He was not defeated by our characters. He was defeated by the Dragon Soul, and then we kind of finished him off. I feel like that is exactly what should happen with Archimonde. I don't think we should just like go and fight him. So story-wise, it just doesn't really add up. It's really anticlimactic because we have this character for like the past 20 years, and it is kind of similar as in defeating Sergeras in a raid, which would also be really lame. I think if we ever fight Sergeras, it will be sort of like a Deathwing scenario, so we get some super powerful weapon, like maybe like combine the artifacts, or I don't know, find like some, you know, like the Halls of Origination thing, like use something against in Sergeras and then we like super damage him and then we defeat him. So I think something like that could happen. Also, I think at this point he could still make some appearance in Legion, but I'm not really certain. Alright, so the next question is by 4WD with love, I guess. What is love? Something like that, I'm not really certain. Doron, do you think we will ever have spellbreakers? Warriors similar to paladins but wielding arcane instead of the light, like a L'Oreal spellblade. That would be my favorite class lore-wise. Well, this has been one of my favorite classes, not really the favorite, but one of my favorite classes in the lore, because it has been in Warcraft 3 as a blood elf, and it's sort of like this battle mage, like a mage paladin, and I would definitely love to see this in game, but I really doubt that it would be added anytime soon. Mainly because Blizzard really needs a reason to add something like that, like add a new race, add a new class. I speculate at this point we'll probably have another expansion that will be either Legion related, Void related, or both in one expansion, and then the next one similar to the Void Lords, depending on how well World of Warcraft does. However, the only spell breakers that we have really seen were High Elves and I guess Blood Elves later on, and there really are no like High Elves, Blood Elves that we haven't found out yet that are like hiding on some island. It definitely could be possible, like if there's like a sea-related ends out expansion and then there's like this island of Blood Elves or High Elves, you know, when they traveled with the ship, so maybe they stranded, like one ship stranded on the island and the others reach Kael'Thas, so maybe these are like spellbreakers, and then we see a new class, although I really doubt something like that would happen because they would probably want to introduce a race and we already have Blood Elves, so it wouldn't really be that interesting. I think the highest possibility for this to happen is if we have a new race, maybe from some other world, depending on where the expansion is, and then they have like spellbreakers, they're like the warriors of their race, so that's how the class gets introduced, but I don't know, I'm really not that certain. If you can spot a pattern from the past 2 expansions, is that Blizzard is not really keen on introducing new races or classes, because it is definitely a balancing nightmare, and there is already quite a lot of classes and races that are in the lore, so I'm not certain how many they will add in the future, but I think the Spellbreakers do have a decent chance, so I would definitely play something like that if it came out. Alright, the next question is by AMVIL, and he asks, do you think Kael'Thas joined Kil'Jaeden by choice, or was he possessed by him? I've received this question actually a few times, and I think the best way to describe this is that Kil'Jaeden kinda preyed on the weakness of Kael'Thas, because not long ago Kael'Thas lost his homeland, his father died, his entire kingdom was destroyed, pretty much 90%, like 85-90% of his people died, and now he arrived on this strange barren world and he's trying to recover and get as much power as possible, because he saw what happened when he didn't have the power and everything that he loved was destroyed. So at this point he realized just how much potential there is that he is not really exploiting, because he is allied with Illidan, whose main goal is not really the preservation of the Blood Elves, or at least not in the eyes of Kael'Thas. So Kael'Thas doesn't really know what the real plan of Illidan is, which is obviously to defeat the Legion and save Azeroth, which means it would save his people. So Kael'Thas, if you look at his perspective, he's thinking that Illidan is like this crazy guy. He doesn't really know what he's doing, he doesn't have the full picture, he doesn't seem like he has his people's interest in mind, and he decided to ally with the Legion to gain more power than he ever had before and to like never fall prey like he did in the past. So looking at it at this point, it is a really stupid decision, because I mean, you can see what happened. He died. They lost a lot of Blood Elves once again, even though there's not many of them, so it was pretty stupid. And I think from the story development perspective, it is a really lame plot twist, because Kael'Thas was never really like this super impulsive, power-hungry guy. In Warcraft 3, his main priority was to find a cure for his people's addiction and to rebuild his home. It wasn't really his goal to become a servant of the demons that pretty much indirectly destroyed his home. Sadly, Blizzard decided to go for the story, like this story, so there's not really much you can change. So to answer your question, I think he wasn't really possessed by Kil'Jaeden, but he pretty much just what I said at the start. Kil'Jaeden just preyed on his weakness. Okay, the next question is by WoW Jedi, and he asks, I was wondering if Jaina was truly a dreadlord or just an insane mage. I mean, I have been hearing a lot of people saying that during the bombing of Terramore, Jaina somewhat died and a demon took over her body, or did she have a demonic artifact like a soul stone and the demon take over her body and her soul would be trapped within the dark mind of the dreadlord? So this is a really wild speculation that kind of makes some sense. It kind of reminds me of that, like the ancient aliens thing that happens, because you can like get some facts and it kind of makes sense even though it doesn't really. I believe Jesse Cox picked up this theory. I think it was like a fan theory that started, and then Noble picked it up and it kind of really got popular. I think even Blizzard at some point made some slight references to like this inside joke in the community. However, I really don't think this is the case, because I don't think Jaina is possessed by any demon or dreadlord. There has been some talks that Jaina will join the Legion and go full evil, because she stormed out on that Kirin Tor meeting where they were discussing the return of the Horde to Dalaran. Still, I think she was just like pissed off and she was scarred, that there was like a trauma because of the Terramore thing, and I don't really think like she will actually join the Legion. What I think Blizzard wanted to show us is that in the Warcraft lore, you can't really be a peace-loving character. Like, this is not an ideal world, so they transformed this peace-loving diplomat type character to an impulsive, aggressive leader just looking for the interest of her people first, in order to show that this isn't like this fairy tale where there's like the good guys and the bad guys and you can just talk nicely to the good guy, to the so-called bad guys, and they're gonna help you. I think they just wanted to add an element of realism, so it is just kinda like a character switch, but I highly doubt that Blizzard would change Jaina to the extent of her becoming evil and turning against her people, because that would just be stupid. I mean, she's traumatized from destroying Terramore, so she's gonna destroy all the humans and pretty much all of her people, eradicate them. I really don't think that would happen, and I think as I said, it is just a character switch. Alright, we got a next question by Warchief Ultra Death Conan Barbarian Terminator. Alright, that is an interesting name. What's the lore behind pygmies? Are they the Trog equivalent of humans? So, I covered this in my top 10 interesting lore facts number 5, but to keep this brief, pygmies have very little backstory. We know that they're somehow related to the goblins, but that is the older lore, not older role. Before Chronicle gave us more insight on the origin of the goblins, so it is kinda outdated lore. I think they're really just like native to the continent. I know a lot of people think that they're related to the gnomes because they look like gnomes. They're pretty much like brownish gnomes. Like, they just look more primitive because they're like people living in the jungle. So they actually don't have anything to do with the gnomes. Really, I think the answer to this is they're just like a themed race that seemed fitting for Cataclysm because they wanted to add these like goofy tiny island people that are kind of like comic relief, but they also have some backstory, but they're definitely not any race that has any significant lore. Alright, we got 3 more questions. The next question is by Owen, and he asks, why did Illidan's Naga, led by Lady Vash, work with Illidan? Queen Ashara wanted to summon and marry Sargeras, and then she was saved by the old gods. It seemed weird that Naga would work with a good guy. Were they rebels? I'm not good with vanilla and TBC lore. Alright, so I feel like this lore is kind of like a gray area or a slight retcon from the Warcraft thing, because in the Warcraft 3 cinematic we see that Illidan awakens the Naga from the sea and they kinda arise from the waters and follow him. So he casted some spell that reached the depths of the ocean and Lady Vash and her Naga responded. They have known each other since before the War of the Ancients, and both Illidan, the Naga, and Lady Vash, I mean the Naga were the Highborn, they were all users of the arcane, so they knew each other. I believe Lady Vash even had a crush on Illidan at some point. However, at this point they have different masters, as the Naga are servants of the old gods, and Illidan started working seemingly for Kil'Jaeden, but the Naga were, well, the Highborn before were also allied with the Legion in the past. By the way the Naga responded, it seems like Illidan called a favor to the Naga, even though I don't know why he would really have a favor with them. Maybe he did something in the past, but I think what his task is from the Burning Legion to defeat fulfill what the Legion wants to do to defeat the Lich King. I think they would also indirectly further the cause of the Naga and the old gods, because if the Legion takes over the world, the old gods could get free. Doesn't make that much sense now with Chronicle lore, because the Burning Legion and the old gods are definitely like the mortal enemies of each other. The only reason the Burning Legion exists is to defeat the Void. So, I don't know, I feel like it is kinda like retconned, maybe. I'm not like, it is a really tricky question to answer. It's just like a gray area. If any of you guys know any about this, just feel free to leave it in the comments and I will check it out. But I think there is a factor of common origins, because Illidan is a Night Elf, Lady Vash is a Naga who was a Highborn, and Kael'Thas is a Blood Elf who was a High Elf who was a Highborn. So they were all pretty much Night Elves at one point, so that seems like there is some factor of like the old races uniting together to kinda, I guess, rule the world once again. I'm not really certain on this question. So the next question is by Shachar Grimes, and he asks, what do you think the Blood Elves and the High Elves think of each other? Do they hate each other? They are still the same race. This is kind of a tricky question, but it is related to the previous one I talked about. We don't really know how many High Elves there are, and some of them are not really connected. Like the Dalaran ones are connected, but there's also a bunch of High Elves that move to the human kingdoms pretty much like separately. It's sort of like immigrants from a country moving to a different country, and then like this country goes to war or something happens, and then they just stay there. So they're not really that centralized apart from the Dalaran ones, and the High Elves are really not that big in numbers. However, looking back at their relationship, it has definitely been a roller coaster. First, many of them decided not to follow Kael'Thas and his dark ways of hell, and started kinda looking at Blood Elves with disgust because they're leading their people into darkness. Then, some relations were improved, but then the Horde bombed Terramore and the big fight broke out between the Dalaran factions, which are mostly Blood Elves and High Elves. This then caused a greater split between the two. So, to answer simply, their relations are not that great, but I'm sure that there are definitely Blood Elves and High Elves out there that see each other as one people and would really like to restore their old society and rebuild Kael'Thas at some point. But it is really more like up to the individuals, I guess, like the opinions of the individuals on the thing, because the Dalaran factions are still really not in good relations, even though there has been some voting for, I mean, there was the voting for the Horde factions to rejoin the neutral Dalaran. Alright, and the last question is by Snubby, or Snooby, and he asks, how strong are the non-Pandaren monks, and how much time passed since they first got taught the ways of the monk? Are there non-Pandaren masters? Well, in-game there are a lot of masters. You can see that if you go to the, the training area for the monks that you have the spell to go to. But lore-wise, it just doesn't make that much sense. I mean, you can see Tauren monks, gnome like monk masters in Pandaria, which doesn't make sense. You can become a master at something in like a few months, even though you just like reach Pandaria. So it is kind of ridiculous. Especially like being a monk, because monk is something that takes a lot of practice both mentally and physically. I think there's even more mentally than physically. Like you can become physically a master if you're already like a warrior or a rogue, but like this mental training, it just takes time. I don't think there's like a magic formula that they become masters. However, in game, it's just like in-game and lore thing, it's just not the same. Lore-wise, it would make sense that most like the only masters out there are the Pandaren, because they're the most experienced. This has been their traditions for thousands and thousands of years. But since it has been a few years since Mists of Pandaria, I believe there's like 4 or 5 lore-wise, it is possible like that other races are catching up. There could even be like lore masters out there. I think at some point in the future, like the monks will be as widespread as the warriors, the rogues, and it will kind of be like an all-race thing. So that is all there is for the questions. I hope there has been like sufficient lore questions for this Q&A. I really wanted to like make this a bit longer. I really have been slacking a bit on the Q&As in the past. So feel free to leave your questions for the next one. And also you can join the Discord if you want to ask me questions directly. And also I put some questions from Discord here as well, so that is also a way for you to get like in these videos. It would be great if you want to leave your questions. Like the ideal way to leave them is to go to the comment section below, type something big Q&A just so I can search it, because sometimes I forget questions and I don't really see them. So just put something like a question for the big Q&A and I will see if I can answer them in the next video. So that is all there is for this video, and thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.